Hey guys, welcome to Watercolor Studies. We are going to be going over 8 different techniques that we can apply to use in your next watercolor project. So looking here, what you're going to get is you're going to get a white piece of paper and you are going to create 8 sections. Now you're going to notice I have more than 8, and it could be a recommendation you do. I like to have 2 additional extras just in case I make a mistake. There is additional paper to try it again. So you can see underneath each one of the areas that we're going to paint, there's a little space, and this space is for us to label it. So looking for supplies, you're going to need the following. You're going to need watercolor palette, you're going to need a cup with water, you're going to need a pencil, and you're going to need a paintbrush. Later on, you are going to need a black pen, and that could be just something from your pencil pack. Over here, you are going to grab the following. So you can see this is where you grab the paintbrushes, this is where you grab the water cups, where you can fill them in the sink, the paint palettes. Okay, you're eventually going to be working with salt, and here is where you grab that. You're eventually going to be grabbing a crayon. This is where you grab that. And then for the paper towels, this is where you're going to grab that. And then there is a rubbing alcohol technique, and you are going to be using the Lysol wipes, and that is directly right here for you to grab. So let's get to it. Alrighty guys, so the first one we're going to do is the salt technique. So we're going to start by writing the word salt underneath, and we are going to take our cup and our paintbrush and our palette, and we are going to pick one of the following. Now the recommendation is that you don't use white because you're not going to see it, and you don't use yellow or black as well because you're also not going to see it very well because of how light and how dark they are. So to start, we're going to dip the brush into the water, making sure it's nice and wet, and choose any color. For this, I'm just going to choose blue because it's right next to my hand, and I'm going to go ahead and pet the paint palette, getting the paint on the brush. Now notice I'm not power drilling it on, I am just simply grabbing by lightly brushing the area. To fill in the space, I'm using a lot of water. It is so important you use a lot of water to fill in the space. Now to do the salt technique, you're going to take a little salt and you're going to just place it on top. You can just grab a pinch and place a pinch, and you immediately see all these little polka dots. That's the technique you want to see. The next technique is the tissue technique, and this is for when you have too much paint on your paper and you need to get it out of the way, or maybe it's too dark and you need it to be lighter. So to do this, you're going to take a color. I'm going to take red. I'm going to get some paint. I'm going to paint it on, fill it up with water. Lots of water, lots of paint. Notice that I'm actively moving between the two. And then I'm going to take my paper towel and just going to place it down. And you're going to see that some areas are lighter and some areas are darker, and it's also kind of dry. That's great to use for if an area gets out of hand, where it's a little messy, it's too dark, and you want it to dry a little faster. So let's go ahead and write tissue there. Okay, the next is the alcohol technique. Okay, so you could just go ahead and put Clorox if you want, just so you remember where it is. It's the Clorox wipes, and what's going to happen is a scientific effect. You're going to take a Clorox wipe. I'm grabbing one right now. So notice I get my body up and I go get the supply when I'm ready to start the technique. I'm not grabbing everything all at once. So I grabbed a paper towel or the Clorox wipe. And what's going to happen is it's going to create like a little white ring. So I'm going to get some green. I'm going to place it on. Trying to get it as bold as possible so you can see in the camera. Filling up the space. Notice that's super wet. And then I'm going to take the Clorox wipe and I'm going to give it a squeeze. Let it drip, and you see the scientific effect of like that whitish ring happen. That's what you're looking for. And if you don't see it, that's why you have those extra spaces if you added them. If you didn't add them, I can give you another piece of watercolor paper to try it again. Okay, the next one is the crayon technique. And this is like a magic trick. You're gonna get on up like I'm doing right now. You're gonna grab a white crayon and you're gonna write your name. So apply some pressure. Whoop, I applied too much pressure, look at that. Okay, and write your name. And you're gonna see that it's invisible. Right now there's like a little blue residue, see a little bit. And then you're gonna take a color, like a darker color. I'm gonna take this other blue. And I'm gonna fill my paintbrush up. And I'm gonna paint on top for my name to appear. Look at that. Pretty cool. This is great for if you're doing things like the little white dot in the pupil of a eyeball of an animal, or maybe literally anything that you want to keep white. Okay. The next is the pen and ink technique. So pen and ink. So this is you just taking a black pen or a Sharpie. I'm getting up to go grab one right now. They're over by the paper. And you're gonna draw something here. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw a fish. Kind of like a goldfish cracker. Okay, so I have a fish. There. And now what you guys are gonna do, I recommend grabbing a smaller brush for this, so get on up and grab a smaller brush. And you're gonna paint inside the fish one color. And you're gonna paint around the fish another color. So fish is in water, and this is a great opportunity to learn how to mix paint. Now let's say this blue is way too nuclear power plant and you want something a little more natural and you want to mix the colors. So to mix the colors, you got to take the top of the palette, you got to find a clean space. This is dirty and it just so happens to be blue, but you got to find a clean space and you got to grab some of the color that you want, put it in the space, and then you're going to grab some of another color to mix it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to mix it in here. Maybe I want some of this to be a little more tropical. And I'm going to place it around my goldfish cracker fish. Now, if you notice, there's a little bit of like lines there. And if you don't like those lines, you just directly apply water. And in an oval fashion, they will smooth out. Okay, and that is the pen and ink technique. The next one is water drops. And this one, you're gonna start with applying one color. I'm gonna apply orange. And you're going to fill in the space. Then you're going to take a different color and splatter it on top. So I'm going to choose purple. I take this. I'm going to take my pencil and go tap, 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 tap. It's okay if it gets into the other spots, not to worry. This is a technique sheet, not a perfection sheet. Okay. The next one is going to be splatter, so you can see the difference. So the water drops, you see how it bleeds out. This is not going to bleed out because there's no wet paper underneath. So I'm going to take purple again, and go tap, 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 and that's it. The last one is transparency, and this is where you really start to gain control of the watercolor, and it's all about how much water you use in the paint, okay? So to start, we're gonna make 3 squares. The first one is gonna be a lot of water. I'm grabbing a ton of water here, and a little bit of paint, and we're gonna make this really transparent. See how that's really transparent? The next is gonna be like 50-50. So 50-50, grabbing a little more paint, and it's gotta be like halfway. And then the last is gonna be like all paint, so we're gonna get really dark. You should be able to see the difference. Okay, see how it goes light, medium, dark. This is great for your project coming up, for you to shade in your animals with different values. So this is just like the still life project with the highlights, midtones, and shadows. And this is called transparency. Okay, so this is the technique sheet. When you are done, go ahead and submit it to Canvas, and then you're gonna put this in the back on the drying racks. Make sure your name is on it. If you didn't, put it as your crayon technique. All right, that is all, guys. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.